And three sinister thunderstorm tales, unexplained horrors revealed in spine-chilling true accounts. As thunder rumbled like a monstrous growl, Liz's heart raced like the rhythm of desperate footsteps echoing through the shadows of her home. It was one of those nights. The air hitched tight in her throat. The din of the storm was a cruel reminder that horror often struck when you least expected it. With her two daughters safe in their beds, or so she thought, Liz stepped into the fray of her shift at the local diner, determined to keep the family afloat in a world filled with uncertainty. But everything began to shift when her phone buzzed with a message from Clara. The girl's face was etched with ghost stories told too close to bedtime. She claimed to hear something from the attic. "Mom, there's something up there!" Her gut twisted. Liz dismissed it, chalking it up to Clara's overactive imagination, kids and their wild fears. In the depths of her heart she felt a nagging worry, but dismissed it as the tempest roared outside. The storm's sinister moan shifted towards the malicious when June texted, "Mom, there's a shadow outside." Panic set in as a chill crawled up her spine, twisting her nerves tighter than a noose. She strained to soothe her daughters through the screen, but somewhere in the dark, new unsettling sounds began to weave into the howling wind. A loud crash echoed from above, the sharp thud rattling the very foundation of their cozy home. They hadn't been idle thoughts anymore. Now they were creeping specters, twisting horror into reality. By then, the atmosphere was heavy with dread. Laughter rippled through the wind, almost too dark to be human. It tangled with the thunder, igniting embedded fears, leading Liz to grapple for reason and clarity. Her trust in Mr. Granger, the neighbor who always offered to look after her girls, faltered. His kind gaze began to shimmer with something monstrous, a kaleidoscope of intentions she hadn't discerned before. "It's just the weather," he said one night, and she had taken his word at face value. But what lay hidden behind those decades of good deeds? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The wind howled louder, generating a fierce sense of isolation bubbling in her chest. She could hear emergency sirens wailing distantly, but they were no longer a lifeline. With the phone lines fried, she recognized the bleak truth. Her sanctuary was a prison. Driven by rising determination, she decided to confront the attic. The very source of her daughter's fears stood in her mind like a looming mountain. Armed just with a flashlight and trembling hands, she climbed the stairs. A deep whisper coiled around her name, chilling her to the bones. Suddenly, dread crashed down like another thunderclap. As she shoved the attic door open, it greeted her with a gust of stale air and the remnants of forgotten memories. There, flickering as if it were alive, something moved in the shadows. Then the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. What lay in the silence beyond could change everything, if it didn't consume her first. The attic smelled of dust and old wood, a decaying scent that mixed with the storm's raw energy. Liz's flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams against the wooden beams overhead. The shadows twisted and danced, her imagination running wild as the wind shrieked outside. She gripped the flashlight harder, steeling herself against the fear that threatened to swallow her whole. "Clara? June?" Her voice trembled through the tense air. Silence responded, heavy and thick, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. She felt the walls close in, heartbeat loud in her ears. The darkness seemed to stretch further out, swallowing any remnants of light. "Get a grip, Liz," she hissed to herself, breathing in deep and slow, trying not to listen to the creeping sense of dread gnawing at her instincts. Suddenly, a shadow slinked across the far corner of the attic, vanishing before she could fully comprehend it. Liz felt her heart thunder louder, an urgent beat against the rising chaos inside her mind. She moved to the edge of the room, scanning desperately for the source of movement. But nothing was there. Then came the whisper again, softer this time, curling like smoke around her. "Help! Me!" "Who's there?" Liz whispered, terror scraping at her throat. "Is someone in here?" The only answer was a low crackle of wood shifting, and then nothing. A bone-chilling wind lashed against her face, making her jump. The attic felt alive now, a breathing entity filled with more than just memories. Her eyes flickered to the old trunk sitting in the shadows, a weathered chest that seemed to hum with an eerie energy. Before she could second-guess herself, she approached it. The latch was rusted but released with a stubborn creak. With bated breath, she lifted the lid. Inside lay a jumble of old photographs, letters and toys that belonged to her daughters long ago. But there, nestled underneath, was something else. A small, dusty doll, its porcelain face cracked and eyes unnervingly wise. Liz recoiled, a pulse of cold coursing through her. No memory of that doll flickered to life. It felt as if it had been waiting for her. The storm raged outside, synchronizing with the thunderous thumping in her chest. Something was off. She could feel it deep in her bones. She picked up the doll for a closer look, only to find that its smile seemed to widen. "Mom!" The voices of Clara and June pierced through her thoughts, frantic and filled with an urgency that made Liz whirl around. "We're scared. Please come back." The sound of her daughters calling out shattered the attic's foreboding enchantment. Panic clawed at her throat. "I'm here! I'm coming!" She dropped the doll back into the trunk and rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. It rattled against her efforts, holding firm. "Mom!" The cries grew faint, slipping through the air like smoke. Liz pounded against the door. "No, don't leave me!" She felt a shadow shift behind her, cold fingers brushing against her spine. Something dark and malevolent stirred, releasing a frigid wave that sent adrenaline coursing through her. The storm outside reached a fever pitch, wind shrieking through the cracks, and she finally caught sight of movement in the corner of her vision. Dark shapes coalesced, a twisted mass of energy forming. "Help! Us!" it whispered, echoing her daughters' voices, twisting them into a nightmarish song. "Clara! June!" she screamed, the name cutting through the dark fog of dread. But time slipped away. The air grew thick, suffocating. Something terrible loomed, and Liz understood. She had to escape. The thought hit like lightning. She had to save them, even if it meant facing the darkness that danced on the edges of her sanity. But how? The shadows around her stirred violently, and Liz steeled herself. The only way out was through. As she lunged for the door again, a brief flash of light illuminated the attic, revealing a horrifying glimpse, a figure looming, eyes glinting like shards of glass. And then silence fell again, a heavy dread pressing against her, as though the darkness in that attic was now alive, waiting. What awaited Liz when she confronted the shadow? Was it truly her children's cries she heard, or something far more sinister? Liz's heartbeat thundered in her ears, a relentless drum demanding escape. The weight of the attic pressed down on her as the shadows writhed, blurring the line between fear and madness. She faced the door, every muscle tensed, desperation clawing at her throat. "Let me out!" she screamed, her voice echoing back in mockery. The wood groaned under her fists but remained unyielding, just like the darkness behind her. The figure flickered into view again, its outline a grotesque parody of a human form, twisting and elongating, impossible angles that defied reason. "Help! Us!" The whisper rolled over her, icy fingers brushing against her cheek like the breath of something ancient and cruel. Liz turned slightly, her flashlight trembling in her hands. The light caught the doll, its cracked porcelain face grinning cruelly from the trunk. A flicker of memory bubbled to the surface, how Clara had adored that doll as a child, their laughter filling this very space. But now, the toy seemed to hum with a darker energy, a hunger she could almost taste. "Clara! June!" she shouted again, using their names like a shield against the encroaching dread. But the silence that followed was tinged with malevolence, a stillness too deep, too complete. The shadows slinked closer, merging into a swirling vortex that felt like it wanted to pull her in, to devour her whole. Liz squared her shoulders, forcing herself to breathe, even as panic fluttered wildly in her chest. She had come here for them. The thought ignited a flicker of hope in the midst of despair. "I will save you," she cried, as though to the void itself. But the attic's energy crackled, mocking her resolve. Then the air shifted. A loud bang erupted, and a nearby window shattered, broken glass cascading down like deadly rain. Liz flinched but forged ahead, adrenaline sharpening her focus. She bounced against the door again, her palms sore from the relentless assault. "This is not the end!" she yelled defiantly, the determination boiling inside her. Waves of cold crested over her, pulling her back with a haunting whisper. "Stay, stay with us!" She screamed at the unseen presence. "I will not stay!" and pushed against the door with all her strength. The latch rattled violently, and for a moment she thought she might break through. The dark shapes intensified, swirling like a tempest, and all at once the whispers fused into a cacophony. "Help us stay forever." The chant dug deeper into her skull, wrapping around her mind, trying to pull her under. In that moment of turmoil, Liz felt something slick beneath her feet. She looked down, the floor glistening with an ominous liquid that seeped out from the shadows. It pooled around her ankles, cold and suffocating. Breathing became a challenge as the air thickened with despair. "No!" she screamed, struggling to lift her feet, but they felt heavy, trapped. "Mom!" The sound of her daughter's voices broke through the chaos, softer now, fading away, but still filled with that desperate plea. "Mom, please!" With sheer force of will, Liz twisted, snatching the doll from the trunk. A surge flooded through her, as if its power coursed into her veins. No longer just a forgotten relic, it became a talisman of her love, her determination. She held it tight, screaming, "You won't take me from them!" The shadows wailed, an anguished sound that vibrated through the very fabric of the attic. The wind outside reared back in response, howling like a beast unleashed. The energy swirled violently, and Liz felt the walls tremble. In the midst of chaos, she shouted again, "I'm coming for you!" She braced herself, one last push at the door, the strength of a mother's love backing her. With a thunderous crack, the door burst open, flinging her into the chaotic storm outside. Cold rain battered her face as she stumbled out onto the edge of the porch, gasping for breath, the night alive with fear. With the doll still clenched in her hand, she turned back to the attic, the door swinging lightly behind her, shadows shifting ominously in the flickering light. "Clara! June!" she called again, hope battling despair as the air crackled with an unseen power. But as the wind turned, she felt a pull back, a gravity that threatened to drag her under once more. What had she unleashed? What secrets did that doll hold? And was it truly over, or had she only begun to unravel the horror waiting in the dark? The rain lashed against her face, sharp and cold, like tiny needles piercing through her resolve. The forest surrounding the house seemed to close in, tall trees looming like silent sentinels, shadows pooling at their bases. Every flash of lightning illuminated the treetops for mere moments, creating a strobe of fear in the air that surrounded her. Liz staggered back from the doorway, eyes darting to the attic window, where shapes flickered for only a heartbeat, then vanished, almost as if they were watching her. She could feel a malevolence hanging just beyond the walls of the house. a breathing, living thing that demanded her attention, demanded her belief. "Clara! June!" she shouted again, her voice carrying over the wind, desperate but unanswered. The silence felt mocking, a heavy blanket that smothered her chances of finding them. A tremor cascaded through her joints, and she squeezed the doll tighter, its porcelain cold pressing against her palm. Something moved in the depths of the shadows, a whisper of fabric against wood, and she whipped around, heart racing, breaths quick and shallow. The doll felt warmer now, pulsing gently, weirdly alive. A sudden thought pierced through her panic. If this doll was a connection to her daughters, how could she tap into that power? "Clara! June!" She turned back towards the porch, the wind clawing at her, attempting to pull her away from the house. "I won't leave you." Taking a step forward, she felt her heart drop. The ground below the porch creaked and moaned, and she half suspected it was alive, a sinister echo of her own anxiety. She could picture them up there, hidden in that suffocating darkness, perhaps even trapped by those same shadows that had menaced her in the attic. "Mom! Help us!" The faintest hints of their voices drifted on the breeze, sweet and soft, yet tinged with despair. "No!" The word shattered from her lips, an emergency flare igniting her nerve. "I'm coming!" She turned back, glancing over her shoulder, taking hesitant steps towards the open door. The shadows flickered eagerly, beckoning her closer, hungry. She climbed the stairs, each step creaking ominously beneath her weight, as if the house itself was protesting her return. The air in the attic was thick, almost electric. With every inch closer to the shadows, she felt a push against her from the depths of the room, daring her to turn back. The doll vibrated in her grasp, a steady hum that resonated throughout her body. She raised the doll to her chest, a shield against the abyss she was stepping into. "Let my daughters go!" she shouted, her voice straining as she took another step forward. And then she saw them, their tiny, fragile figures standing just beyond the veil of shadows. Clara, with her golden hair and innocent blue eyes, and June, clutching her teddy bear, their faces twisted with something Elizabeth had never seen before. Fear. "Mum!" They reached toward her, their faces illuminated by the sporadic flashes of lightning. But as Liz reached for them, the shadows shifted violently, sweeping over her daughters like a shroud, enveloping them. "No!" As they disappeared into the darkness, Liz let out a scream that tore through the storm, clawing at her throat. She spun around, heart pounding, desperation scraping at her sanity. How could she fight something that wore her daughters' faces? How could she face the truth of this nightmare? Then she noticed something lingering in the corner of the room, an ancient mirror, tarnished and dim, catching the little light from outside. It pulsed with the same energy as the doll, a silent echo of dark possibilities that sent shivers down her spine. "Look within," a voice echoed, low and chilling, distorting the very air around her. Could that mirror be the key? She stepped toward it, drawn into its depths, but fear aimed its arrows straight at her heart. As she neared, she could almost hear the whisper of warnings threading through her mind. Would it reveal a truth she wasn't ready for? In a moment of reckoning, she hesitated. The room darkened momentarily, everything around her stretching into shadow. No, not again. But the mirror beckoned. What chilling reflections awaited her there? What horrors would force her to confront choices she had yet to make? And deep within it, she thought she saw Clara's face again, pleading, waiting. Suddenly, the energy in the attic shifted, the wind outside slamming the door behind her. The shrieking of the storm echoed the disquiet in her heart. Time was running out, and she had to decide. Was she ready to confront the truth and the shadows that lived within? The attic swallowed her fear whole as Liz stepped closer to the mirror. Its surface rippled with an unholy energy, a dark pulse that quickened as she drew nearer. Clara's face hovered in the depths, fragile and desperate. But beneath her innocent plea, Another face lurked, twisted and sneering, beckoning Liz toward the edge of understanding. "Liz!" The voice slithered through the air, a chilling caress that fluttered against her skin. "You know what you must do. Only you can save them." She backed away, heart hammering, the doll still clutched tightly in her hands. The warmth spread through her fingers, but it felt wrong, treacherous. "What do you want from me?" Liz shouted at the mirror, her voice trembling against the thunderous storm outside. The glass darkened, swirling like black clouds churning in the sky. Shapes danced beyond the surface, reflections of twisted memories and half-formed thoughts, flickering in and out like dying fireflies. She choked back a gasp as shadowy figures began merging with the reflections, whispers of children with empty eyes, and laughter that turned into wails. "Mum! Please!" Clara cried again, her voice piercing through the chaos. "We're trapped! You have to see!" Liz felt the walls of the attic close in, then expand into a vast void, confusion overwhelming her. "See what?" she screamed, fists tightening around the doll. An icy grip of helplessness clawed at her throat. She needed answers, but the shadows spun faster, weaving a web of disorienting darkness. With a rush of adrenaline, she lunged forward, pressed her forehead against the mirror, and gasped at the images that flooded her mind. The fleeting visions showed Clara falling, her tiny hands reaching out to July before being swallowed by an inky abyss. Liz's heart lurched in response. Each scene pulsed with emotion, a raw anguish that transformed into anger. "Show me how to help them," she cried, tears blurring her vision. In an instant, the swirling shadows responded. The attic exploded into a cacophony of heat and chill, the mirror a conduit to the chaos, revealing her worst fears laid bare. There were faces she recognized, lost children from the neighborhood, voices only whispers from the past. Shadows born from neglect and despair clawed their way up from the mirror's depths, as if demanding retribution. Then a single sharp image broke through, the dilapidated remnants of the neighbor's old shed, a forsaken structure half hidden by bramble and vines, the place where Liz often heard unsettling sounds in the night. She staggered back, breathless. "That's where you are." Her daughter's faces wavered just behind her, eyes wide, pleading. Liz could feel the pull of the mirror, a sinister force begging her to stay. But that was not the way. She could not succumb. "I will find you," she declared, summoning every ounce of courage left in her trembling body. The attic dimmed sharply, whispers fading and twisting into a roar. She felt the shadows claw desperately at her ankles, but she turned away from that dark reflection, escaping the mirror's bleak grasp. Just as she stepped back, the power surged around her, erupting with a ferocity that caught her off guard. The storm outside seemed to respond, the winds howling with urgency. She reached for the door, but it slammed shut with a bang that sent the room vibrating and her heart racing. "Get out!" The brazen urgency of the voice shattered the tension. "Go now!" In the face of another failing heartbeat, Liz lunged for the attic stairs, pumping her legs to propel her forward. Each step down felt like a race against the rising chaos chasing her. But the shadows reached for her, gasping, whispering. Suddenly, just as she reached the bottom, the ground beneath her shuddered, the house groaned in response, a harbinger of threats unknown. She turned, clutching the doll, determined to rescue her daughters, whatever it took. But as she looked back, the attic door swung wide open, revealing the same shadow figures now taking form, and between them stood the mirror, showing her reflection, and not just hers anymore. Clara and June were there, apparitions caught between worlds, their eyes pleading to be freed. "Mom, help us," they echoed hauntingly, mixed with those dark shadows creeping closer. Could she truly save them? Did she know how to face the darkness that pinned them down? As she took a shaky breath, the choice lingered. Would she step back into that mirror, risk everything, or flee into the storm, leaving them behind? Time slipped away, and the air grew thick with uncertainty. The shadows closed in, and Liz realized she needed to choose. What would she sacrifice to find them? Liz's heart thundered in her chest as her mind raced. The choice loomed above her, a precipice of love and desperation. The flickering reflections of her daughters taunted her, caught in torment while the shadows lunged hungrily. "Mom, help us!" The voices twisted through her like a knife, cutting deep into her resolve. She scanned the room for a way out. The storm outside rumbled fiercely, shaking the very bones of the house. Liz could feel the walls exhaling the suffocating darkness. She took a step back, her instincts screaming that danger lurked even closer than she realized. The air grew thick with dread, and she could almost taste it. It coated her tongue like ash. Liz glanced once more at the door, her filthy escape route. The shadows pressed around her, twisting into grotesque shapes, yawning wide with hunger, their whispers melding into a saturated chorus of despair. "Flee!" the voice piped up again, urgent and demanding. Yet it implored her to abandon Clara and June, to run away. But how could she? Tears stung her eyes. She felt like she was losing the spark of hope that flickered valiantly inside her. Liz instinctively gripped the doll tighter, its presence a flimsy tether that anchored her to reality. "Tell me what to do," she cried out to the mirror, her voice a quivering echo that dared disturb the shadows. The reflection warped, blending with the live images of Clara and June, their faces growing more desperate. "You have to face it, Mom," Clara shouted. "You can't run. I can't leave you." The shadows shrieked in despair, as if her refusal pierced their ethereal hearts. Liz's confusion morphed into anger. She wanted to scream, to pull those shadows into the light of day, where they could no longer torment. "What do you want from me?" The walls echoed her challenge, as if the house itself had become a malevolent entity that thrived on her fear. In that moment, something flickered within the mirror, striking her with realization. It wasn't just her daughters trapped, it felt much bigger. The lost souls, the silhouettes of fading children. The darkness wasn't just an enemy, it was a consequence, a reflection of neglect and sorrow wrapped around her family's tragic history. A surge of clarity broke through her terror. "I understand now," she breathed. Memory upon memory flooded her mind, the broken promises of the past, the times she brushed aside their fears. The isolation she allowed to creep into their lives, carving out a lonely space in their home. "Mom, help!" The whispers turned into sobs, shaking the very mirror until it erupted with energy, fragments of hope fighting against the tide. It hit her. Facing the darkness meant confronting her own failings, and with that understanding, Liz took a shaky breath, her fear morphing into fierce determination. She took a step closer to the mirror, the shadows seething but momentarily halted by her newfound resolve. "I will break this cycle. I will take them back," she shouted, her voice becoming a war cry against the oppressive force. The shadows writhed, furious at her defiance. "You can't escape your fate," they hissed back, 1,000 voices twisting in anger. But Liz, fueled by a desperate kind of love, reached out toward the mirror. As her fingers grazed the glass, the world spun violently, drawing her into the brink of darkness. Then, a surge of light enveloped her, pushing against the shadows as Clara and June's cries rode the wind. The mirror pulsed, vibrating with raw energy as she fought against the pull. Would this act of defiance unleash salvation, or would it plunge them all deeper into despair? Time stilled for one agonizing moment. And then the darkness surged, snatching at her, pulling not just the girls, but everything into its wretched grasp. Would she truly find the strength to pull them free? Liz could only wonder as the storm outside howled louder. Because sometimes the darkness didn't just wait to swallow you whole. It wanted you to choose to jump. What choice would Liz make on the edge of despair? Liz felt herself being consumed, the shadows wrapping around her like tight, glistening tendrils, squeezing the air from her lungs. Her heart raced as the chaos spun around her, cries of her daughters merging into the very sound of the storm that crashed against the house. She was aware of the pulsing mirror, but it felt like a distant memory. The darkness wanted her to drown in despair. Suddenly, light broke through the engulfing darkness, illuminating the figures of Clara and June. Their hands reached out, fingers stretching toward her, desperate. "Mom!" they yelled, their voices full of raw urgency, echoing against the walls that felt like they were closing in. It was a hauntingly beautiful sight, a reminder that love could still pierce through even the thickest of shadows. She focused on their faces, on the way fear twisted their features. "I'm here! I won't let go!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the confusion. Liz could nearly taste victory. A flicker of warmth surged inside her, but the darkness clawed greedily at her, its cold fingers tightening, pulling her deeper. "Face it!" a shadowy figure whispered, its voice dripped with venom. "You're too weak to save them. You always have been." She shook her head, defiance igniting within. The familiar guilt bubbled up, the reminders of her past mistakes, how she had failed to keep them safe, to listen when they needed her most. But beneath that guilt was something fiercer than all the grief, the strength of a mother unwilling to surrender. Without thinking, Liz lunged forward, hands outstretched toward the mirror. As her palms pressed against the cold glass, a sensation coursed through her body, electrifying her spirit. The mirror flickered again, the room expanding and contracting as if it were breathing. Shadows recoiled, furious, but she didn't care. She felt her daughters pulling at her heart, urging her on. "Believe in us. We can fight this together," Clara shouted, a tremor of hope breathing life into their desperate struggle. Suddenly, the shadows surged, howling in anger, their dark whispers rising into a chaotic frenzy. Liz braced herself, feeling the weight of their hate pressing down harder, but she clung to her daughter's cries and pressed forward. Then a soft melody wafted through the air, an eerie lullaby that carried a strange familiarity. It began to dissipate the darkness around her, each note a reminder of warmth and safety. Liz felt the walls of her heart break open, memories flooding in. It was a song they used to sing together, a tune echoing of joyous summers spent tangled in laughter. As the melody took hold, she could see Clara and June's faces more clearly. They looked stronger than before, smiling against the encroaching shadows. The darkness shrieked, horrified by the intrusion of love and light. Would this song, this bond, reshape their fate? But just as clarity surged, the very air crackled with a change. Instead of dispersing, the shadows grew stronger, swirling into a menacing storm, dark and unpredictable. "You think mere memories will save you." Their voices slithered with malice. Just when hope blossomed, Liz felt her knees buckle, the shadows threatening to rise above her. "I refuse to lose you!" she screamed, pulling herself back to her feet, heart galloping in her chest. The storm roared louder, battering against the house, the mirror pulsing with chaotic energy, as if waiting for the final act. Liz needed to make a choice. Would she surrender to the darkness, lose her daughters forever? Or would she find the strength of their three hearts intertwined to turn the tide? The storm howled like a furious beast. The darkness crept closer, questioning every inch of her resolve. In this moment, the truth cut sharper than any blade. "You cannot escape," the shadows bellowed, closing in, demanding acknowledgement of the inevitable. What was meant to be an escape might turn into a final confrontation. With breath caught in her throat, Liz whispered through clenched teeth, "I will never let you win." And as resolve filled her, the world teetered. Something deep within the shadows stirred, something darkly violent, and a chilling question filled the air, thick as fog. What lurked behind the veil of darkness, and would Liz be strong enough to face it head-on? A crack reverberated through the chaos, jolting Liz from the grip of despair. The shadows writhed around her, images of her worst fears dancing along the edges, memories of her failures as a mother, snippets of careless words, and moments lost in distractions. They screamed for her to relent, but she felt it then. A rush of defiance, a fire igniting deep within her gut. "Stop!" she shouted into the swirling darkness, voice steady despite the tremors within her. The shadows recoiled momentarily, but the moment lingered like a breath. Clara and June's faces blurred slightly, but she could still see their determination beneath the spectral veil. Then from the heart of the billowing darkness, a figure began to take shape. It loomed large, a twisted mockery of her own reflection, eyes glowing like molten coals as they bored into her. It was the embodiment of her doubts, an awful, tangible shadow mirrored after her own darkest thoughts. "Look at you," it hissed, voice dripping with malice. "How can you protect them? You don't even believe in yourself." Liz felt cold sweat trickle down her back, but she held her ground. "I can fight for them. I will fight for them." But the creature laughed, a distorted sound that echoed eerily in the room. "And what strength do you think you have? You're alone. You've always been alone." At that moment, a crack of thunder punctured the air, rattling the walls so violently she nearly lost her balance. The shadows surged, reeling in a frenzy of howls, eager to consume her whole. "Mom!" June shouted, her voice a tether to reality, sharp against all that was falling apart. "You have to believe. We're here." The weight of her daughter's pleas crashed over her like a wave, washing away some of the darkness clinging to her. Liz's heart ached with love. Were they truly there with her, or was this just another illusion crafted by the shadows? "Together," Clara echoed, her voice a desperate chant that filled the room with warmth. In that moment, Liz made a decision. The strength of 3 hearts ignited a fierce glow within her. "You're wrong. I'm never alone," she bellowed, summoning the love they shared, letting it explode outward like light piercing the dark. The shadows screamed, writhing as the glow expanded, pushing back against their tenacity. Liz felt the mirror resonate with her spirit, vibrate like a string plucked in rhythm with her determination. But the figure of her darker self didn't back down. "You can't outrun me!" it snarled, rushing towards her, swallowing her glow like a predator. "You will always be part of me!" The shadows pressed in from every side, crashed against her with frigid fingers. Panic clawed at her throat. She had to make a choice, fight or flee. Liz felt as if the ground beneath her would swallow her whole, yet with every fibers of her being she screamed back, "You don't own me! I will never be you!" A chorus of thunder shook the very air, the mirror flickering wildly, reflecting their battle. A cacophony of light and dark swirling in a violent dance. Liz could feel the strain, could sense the shift happening deep within the shadows, as if the tide was starting to turn. But in that moment of hope, a new revelation shattered the ground beneath her, a sharp reminder piercing through the fog. We haven't been alone. We never were. And just then, as the shadows began to waver, something unfurled from the depths, pushing against the edges of the darkness. A force she hadn't anticipated. What lay hidden in the depths of the shadows? A truth she had yet to confront? As the world around her thrummed with energy, panic surged anew. She realized she could not only save Clara and June, but also face the darkness lurking within herself. The shadows wouldn't let her retreat easily. Would she unravel the horrors born from her own mind, or would they consume her whole? Liz could see the shadows pulling back, but they didn't retreat far. They twisted and coiled like snakes, ready to strike, merging into an oppressive fog that threatened to choke her will altogether. The figure of her darker self hung just beyond the faint glow of the light she'd called upon, its eyes blazing with an unholy hunger. "What are you?" Liz stammered, her throat dry and raw, unprepared for the truth lurking in the murk around her. "It's time you realize the truth." The figure's voice, more like nails on a chalkboard than a whisper, slithered through the air. "You think you can fight me? I am everything you've ever feared. I am your regrets. I am your despair." The shadows flickered, and she felt a sudden chill deep in her bones. Her heart pounded against her ribcage. She couldn't just stay here, wouldn't let her laughter and determination be snuffed out like a candlelight in the gale. But there was something undeniably true in what the figure had said. "Stop!" Clara's voice rang out sharp like glass shattering in the dark. "Mom, don't listen to it. It wants you to give in." "Yes," June echoed, panic creeping into her tone. The fear etched on her daughters' faces, illuminated momentarily by the spectral light, fueled Liz's resolve. Liz squared her shoulders, refusing to let the fear seep in like poison. "You don't control me," she roared, channeling every ounce of love and strength she held for her daughters. "I'll face every single fear, every regret, and I will not waver." The creature shrieked, a sound that clawed at her soul, but she pressed on, pushing the light farther out into the darkness. The shadows twisted violently, screaming as they fought against the tightening glow. But just as victory felt within reach, another rumble of thunder roared, shaking the air like an ominous warning. The shadows snapped back violently, threatening to devour her once more. For a fleeting second, doubt clawed at her again. What if she failed? What if the shadows were right? The figure stepped closer, its twisted form growing more horrid with each heartbeat. "Look around you, Liz. Are they really worth saving? Look what you've done. They are here because of you." With each word, the weight of every past mistake circled around like vultures, relentless and accusing. "No," she shouted, shaking her head furiously. "You're wrong." But even as she declared her defiance, the shadows thickened, pulling her toward them as if the space itself conspired against her belief. Suddenly, the world shifted. The mirror cracked, splintering as a crack of lightning streamed across the visage, illuminating a new horror. Shapes began to emerge from that darkness, figures of regret. A blurry image of her mother, her youngest self, a faceless man who loomed large, as if tied to her every failure. "Help us, Liz," they murmured, voices layered in a mournful symphony. "No, I won't fall for this." But Liz's voice trembled, a crack slicing through her bravado as doubt swept over her like an icy tide. The darkness hissed with glee. "You see, you cannot fight your own shadows. They are your kin." The shadows lunged, tendrils reaching for her daughters, who stood behind her, fear and resolve in their eyes. Liz's breath quickened. This was not just about her anymore. If she fell, so would Clara and June. Together, "We can do this," Clara shouted, reaching for her sister's hand. Liz turned, desperate to protect them, but she felt the shadow pulling her, whispering sweet lies of defeat. "Why do you stay here, Liz? You're better off giving in." And then, an echo from deep within her heart responded, a surge of clarity. It twisted around her like a protective shield. "No!" she screamed, forcing her will into the front lines, hoping her belief could outshine the monster. The battle raged. Would love be enough to cut through the fray, or would they all be consumed? In the climax of chaos, a blinding light exploded from within, a clash of shadows and brilliance unfurling and tearing through the air. As the smoke began to part, questions loomed heavier than ever. What was this new force joining the fray? Could they pull all their fears into the light, or would one desperate moment rip everything they fought for apart? The light burst forth from Liz's heart like a supernova, a beacon cutting through the oppressive darkness that had clung to her. She felt Clara and June swirling around her, their warmth igniting her strength. The shadows screamed, protesting the sudden glow that filled the room. "Together!" Liz shouted, feeling the power surge through them. "We are stronger than our fears." With every ounce of love and determination harnessed, she stretched out her hands, merging their essence into a force of brilliance that reflected every bond they shared, their laughter, their tears, the promises made in despair and hope. "Mom, don't let go," Clara cried, clutching June's hand tightly. Their figures sparkled with a light of courage, unstoppable against the darkness closing in. The malevolent figure, once so powerful, began to shrink, its twisted features warping in terror as the light pressed closer. "You think you can defeat me?" it roared, but Liz pushed forward, her voice breaking through the cacophony, resonating with a purpose she hadn't known was possible. "I refuse to listen," she shouted, feeling the memories flood her mind, scenes of playtime, bedtime stories, laughter shared over family dinners. "These are our bonds, and they cannot be broken." In that moment, Liz launched herself forward, her hands grazing the mirror's surface. The room vibrated, reality bending as the shadows lashed out wildly. The darkness was desperate now, swirling like a storm trying to extinguish a flame. With a final, explosive glow, her love enveloped them, forging its way through the blackness. "We are more than our regrets," Liz declared, the glow becoming a force of nature, ethereal and indescribable. As if responding to her call, the broken mirror shattered, reflecting a million tiny glimmers of light that scattered, illuminating the attic with a brilliance no darkness could contain. The shadows writhed, disintegrating into wisps of despair that twisted into the air, releasing the lost souls they had claimed for far too long. "Mom!" Clara and June cheered, their voices mingling with the tremendous roar of the storm as it calmed, surrendering to the warmth that radiated throughout the house. They rushed forward, clasping Liz tightly, as the remnants of darkness faded away. Tears streamed down Liz's face as she held her daughters close, overwhelmed by the seriousness of their ordeal, mixed with the joy of their reunion. "I thought I lost you," she murmured, catching her breath amidst their laughter and cries of relief. "We knew you'd save us," June whispered, pulling back to meet Liz's gaze, her eyes full of admiration. The sensations began to swirl gently around them, the shadows merely echoes now. Their thundering cries faded, replaced by the cleansing sound of rain softly pattering against the roof. "Did we do it?" Liz felt a glimmer of uncertainty. Was it really over? As if answering her silent prayer, the air settled, the atmosphere tinged with hope, illuminating the attic with a warm glow. The doll, which once radiated malevolence, now lay quietly on the floor with its cracked porcelain face, transformed into a mere toy that had witnessed the terror but couldn't wield it anymore. "Yes, Mom, we did," Clara said, tilting her head confidently. "You faced the darkness, and you fought through for us." "This time we won," June added, her voice strong with conviction. The weight of relief crashed over Liz in a gentle wave. She didn't just save her daughters, she confronted an entire lineage of fear and darkness that had seeped into their lives. What now? Liz's heart beat steadily, a rhythm of hope pulsing through the quiet house. "Now," she said, looking into her daughter's eyes, "we build our lives again, together. Every step forward, we carry this with us." Hand in hand, they moved towards the door of the attic, emerging into the soft light that had broken through the storm. The world outside looked different, brighter somehow. "What a story we will tell," Liz said, her voice a mix of awe and determination. "We faced the storm and chose the light." With that, they stepped out, engulfed in the fresh scents of rain and earth, leaving behind the shadows of the past. It was a new beginning. A clear horizon lay before them, shimmering with possibilities. It's over now, but don't miss what's next. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and spread the love. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about what you just witnessed. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.